Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Unlocking Venture Capital. I'm here with GP Kevin Moore from Serac Ventures. How are you doing, Kevin?
I am fantastic. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm so happy that Daryl introduced us and connected us. Yes, Kevin, please tell us about yourself and about Serac and what your focus is.
High level, I've been in finance and venture capital for like the last 18 years. The last 10 years of that has been in VC. I feel like I've had the privilege of working on both sides of this business, both on
Yeah.
the VC side as an investor working with startups, and also on the LP side, investing into VC funds and co-investing along with them. Serac Ventures is my baby. It started it last year. We're investing in seed stage companies all around the country, FinTech, SaaS, commerce enablement. If you're a founder out there, talk to us. We keep a wide aperture for the types of founders we're looking for.
Yeah.
So we're happy to be doing what we're doing.
Amazing. And I know that you guys are based in Oklahoma. And so I was wondering if there is a reason that you guys are headquartered there, or if that's just kind of how everything kind of came about in your life.
So I'm originally from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and moved out of state. My wife is from Oklahoma City. And when we came here in 2010, it's just a place that's experienced like tremendous growth.
Hmm.
Uh, my previous job took me all around the country, mainly in the Bay Area, LA, New York, Chicago, all over the place. So we built this network all around the country. And I think COVID really opened up people's understanding to realize that you can really build an amazing business or VC firm anywhere you are in the world.
I've been trying to tell people, yeah.
So for us, the boundaries are limitless, and being right here in the middle of the country provides us with easy access to all of the different markets that we're investing in.
Hmm. I know that, what we talked about before was that you actually have a guild network, which is to support founders with. I found that to be so interesting. So, how do founders get to know and understand and how to work with this guild network? And do they have to currently be in your portfolio company already? How does that all work? Because it's something that I don't see everywhere. So, I found that to be particularly unique.
Unlike most VCs, and I'm generalizing because I don't know this, I know that I don't know everything, right? And I know it's a shocker to a lot of
I
people, but
know.
I don't know everything. So my feeling in building out Serac Ventures was to find people who were really good at what they did, whether that was someone who's really good at UI UX, or someone who was a CFO or a COO, or someone who's really good at apps. The guild was the first step in creating that expert network that founders could have immediate access to so they could get the help that they need when they need it. So the guild meets on a quarterly basis. And if there are touch points with founders outside of those quarterly meetings where we invite a potential company or an existing Serac company to do a 30-minute presentation to the guild, and they get that feedback. Sometimes we're talking about contract negotiations, sometimes we're talking about UI UX things, but overall the concept is get people the help that they need, and that network has been phenomenal in doing that. In fact, today we have another guild meeting with a founder that we are considering for the portfolio.
Amazing. That is so great. And, I think that it goes to speak about how well you're building community and how transcendent that is across the different sectors and the different geographies. So I
Yeah,
really
I mean, the
love
guild
that.
is great people on there. We have people from Google, JP Morgan, Adobe. I mean, some really sharp people that are providing that feedback. And I think it supplements the work that we already do with founders. It's just another value add.
Perfect. Um, I know that, the way that the market is, would love to get your opinion on this, that a lot of my VC friends that are usually in the associates or senior associates or analysts, they're all like very highly ambitious, very energetic people. Okay. And you're actually one of the ones that I've actually seen come from another fund and then start your own fund because everyone and their mother wanted to start their own fund about two
Mhm.
years ago, right? And so I was wondering what kind of things and learnings did you experience from when you actually made that leap that you kind of wish you knew then, that I think a lot of our listeners would be so interested to know.
The biggest learning for me in doing this was fully embracing my personal story and reason for why I started Serac Ventures. I mean, look, I told you this, or I think I kind of shed a little bit of color on it, but not all the details. And I may not go into all the details here on this call, but I'm not super proud about the upbringing I had when I was a kid. And a lot of it wasn't my fault. There's certain things about that that I was just embarrassed to talk to people about. But I started to like psychologically look into all of those different reasons and realize like, oh, that's my story. So when I started sharing with LPs and others about like the why behind Serac Ventures, the name and what it means to for me to actually do this role, that's something that took me a while to embrace. And I tell my wife all the time, it's like, man, Serac has brought out something in me that I probably needed to come to terms with for many, many years. But now Serac is like my way of expressing all of those different things through the name, and telling that story is something that I've gotten more comfortable with LPs, and I think that that's resonated more with people. So I would tell people if you're thinking about starting a fund, make sure you integrate your personal story because people really are investing in you, and then the fund secondary.
Hmm. And you know that as you are kind of going through that first fundraising stage, that first, incorporation of your fund and everything, was there a pivotal moment where you had this moment of realization? Was there like an event that happened, or something that somebody had said in your environment that really sunk in?
For sure, there were two critical moments. The first was our anchor investor, Daraja Capital. She she created an environment in our very first meeting where she said, "Hey, let's just talk about you and your why." And it was the most uncommon approach to an investor meeting that I'd ever been in.
Hmm.
And it kind of just shifted my perspective like, oh, this is different. And I thought that that was very unusual, but at the
Yeah.
same time, something I'd always desired because there's always more behind the numbers. There's always more behind people. And she was like the first investor ever to really get to the root of like who I was and am I the type of person that's going to have the grittiness and the resilience and the perseverance to actually build something great? And she brought that out of me. The second thing was I joined this program, VC Include,
Yes.
and it's
Yeah,
like
I
a
know it.
10 or 12-week program.
Mhm.
Great people running that organization. Shout out to Rendell Solomon and all the people over there. But they talked a lot about that as well. So it reinforced what she was saying. Like, you got to tell your why. You got to understand your why. You got to embrace that. So that was a big learning for me because I'd always sort of hidden behind the things that I was doing well professionally and
Right.
the
Right.
achievements I had
Like
and
a VC
avoiding
would
that.
though.
Yeah. But people look at that as like a given. Of course, you're smart. Of course, you understand how this works, but tell me about you and why I should back you. So that those were two critical moments that were early on in the life of the fund.
It's kind of like you're seeing that people are taking your performance as, okay, you've already gotten in the door. And now what's that next step, kind of a thing? And tell me about you, and tell me about, this. And so that's so interesting because I feel like, I mean, our industry is so opaque, as it naturally has always been. That's how a lot of funds have more advantages over than others, but the same with the founders. And
Yeah.
so that's how you get different deal terms from one founder to the other to the other. And so, it's so interesting that how your personal story is something that is going to help you have a better relationship with your other investors. Because I think that when things are very opaque, and when you feel like you come from a place that may be different than other people, it is
Hmm.
really hard to tell anything that makes you look vulnerable, because it's like, oh, well, okay, you are the same performance level as X, Y, and Z other candidates for this, but you have a black mark. So
Right.
what is that going to do with whoever is receiving that? You know what I mean?
Mm.
And I think that makes it so scary for a lot of people to kind of walk through these doors.
Yeah, and it's something that when I talk to a founder or when we talk to founders, we really want to understand that part of them. And we started to experiment, we're experimenting with this thing we call the Iconoclastic score. And this iconoclastic score is like, is this an iconoclastic founder? Someone who has sort of been in the trenches, developed that grittiness and resilience, and can that be measured in a way that we can include it in our due diligence of that particular person? So I came up with, we were, the genesis of this sort of idea. I was running, it was in the winter time, and I'm very disciplined with my workouts. I don't ever miss, regardless of how hot it is, how cold it is. I woke up 6 o'clock in the morning. There's snow all over the ground.
Oh
It's
no.
dark. It's kind of drizzling because it had just snowed the night before. And I'm about a mile into my run, and my knee starts hurting. And I was like, why am I out here? And I said, oh, I'm out here because I'm someone who doesn't make excuses. It doesn't care what the situation, I'm going to keep doing what I need to do in order to be successful. Then I thought, there's got to be a way to measure that in founders. So then we started working on this iconoclastic thing, and it's turned out to be pretty revealing what it is. So I find now that when we're talking to founders, like digging into who they are and really getting them to tell the truth about their why,
Yeah.
it's interesting and it makes it a lot more comfortable to back those types of founders when they're vulnerable with their weaknesses, because in my opinion, it makes them look stronger.
Hmm. That's so interesting. Because, yeah, I mean, that's naturally you wouldn't think that it's going to make you look stronger if you're saying something out of vulnerability and out of something that sounds very raw, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, and so it's really interesting that you say that. And also, that you said that you never miss a workout. I literally missed my workout this morning. I was like, oh man, I just thought about it now. And can you share with us an example of someone who has that trait, that founder of yours that you've, either talked to recently or they were one of the founders that you've invested in, and you're like, this is something that really stuck with me about their trait, and how can I quantify this?
Man, it's almost like every single founder. I'll tell you, look, the very first investment that was made at Serac Ventures was into a founder, Carmelle Cadet at EMTECH. She
Okay.
grew up in Haiti. Haiti is a very, low and very impoverished country. And the environment that she grew up in was unlike any, like you imagine the roughest environment in the United States, and Haiti's even worse.
Yeah.
So she moved to the United States when she was 16, went to college, and then she ended up having this amazing career at IBM for 10 years before spinning out and starting her own company. And she said that part of the reason why she wanted to build this fintech that was sort of enabling financial freedom for others around the world was because of how she grew up and the struggles that she encountered. So when you hear these stories about these founders and their resilience, people think that there's this mutual exclusivity between uh, people who want to do good but also build something great. But it's like every single founder in our portfolio has a story like that. And it's like, of course, you want to back these people because they're the type of people who are going to run through a brick wall to be successful and aren't going to quit no matter how difficult it gets. So that's how we are. That's how I am. So when I see that trait in founders, you kind of just drawn to that.
Yeah, no, I completely get it. And it's also really great that, these are very globally impacting kind of opportunities that people are building, and it will have a ripple effect long after, whoever takes over, and things like
Yeah.
that. So I find that to be so inspiring. For sure, it's what keeps me in this industry, working with great founders. And I think that that's something that, we share, and it's something that hopefully more VCs will share in the long term as well, and be able to want to stay in this kind of environment and industry and utilize your skill set for good. Hopefully.
Yeah. And I think that let's put on our investor hats for a moment. I feel like the way you make money as an investor is you have to figure out where the opportunities are on the edges, where there's some sort of asymmetric advantage that founders give or something that you're doing for investors. And I
Hmm.
feel like by targeting and identifying this characteristic in founders is something that we do really well and something that was missing from the market. Part of the motivation for starting Serac Ventures was just having worked in an environment that was very homogenous and everyone seemed to be doing the same thing. And I kind of got tired of that. And I said, there's an opportunity here that everybody's ignoring. So we're going to build something different to capture that. So I think that as an investor, like a portfolio manager, VC, you have to sort of think about that and include those things that are going to create alpha for your investors. And I think that's a big one.
Yeah. And, adding on to that as well, like, we talked about how you have this great network of guilds that you have provided other startups and founders of the missing parts that they needed, right? And I always found that it was so interesting that especially a lot of, people that are starting out in this industry, they want to be unicorn hunters instead of unicorn builders, right? Like you're hunting for treasure instead of wanting to build them into what you know that they can be, and providing that extra, outside of the box thinking and help that other founders would really need. So I really do love that you guys really do help build instead of just being like hunters everywhere, because there are a lot of hunters already, and I don't know that that's really the skill set that people are going to be building onto in the future as great investors become more and more advanced, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. There's a person I know here who's a phenomenal investor. I won't say his name, but he said something years ago, probably 5, 6, 7 years ago, that stuck with me. He was like, the reason I think I've been successful is because he's so good at getting to like that smallest infinitesimal bit of information that he needs to know before making a decision, like analyzing something down to like there's no more information to discover. And I thought that's interesting. And we were thinking, I think about this with due diligence with founders. We were on a call yesterday with a founder that got kind of contentious to a
Okay.
point. But what we were ultimately trying to understand was like why he was making a certain type of decision. And
Yeah.
we didn't stop pushing into it until he finally just revealed what it was.
Okay.
And then at the end of that, we said to him, now we're comfortable with potentially backing you because now we understand you as a person and why you're doing things the way that you're doing. Because people like dance around the beauty of all of this stuff instead of just really digging in. And I think that that's something I've learned over the years from my peers and people I've worked with, that to be really, really good at this job, you have to be afraid. You have to be willing to ask tough questions and go really deep, and to ensure that you're being a good steward of the capital that people are giving us to
Yeah.
invest on their behalf.
Yeah.
And this isn't play money. This is millions of dollars that we're managing for people, and we take that very seriously.
Perfect. And I think that when someone asked me why I wanted to be a venture capitalist, I was really bad at the whole dancing thing. I don't know all the waltzes. I didn't know any of the steps it felt, and some of the rules of these other kinds of types of organizations. I love when a VC's job is to dig in, is to ask the hard questions, and is to be as straightforward as possible when you're doing the due diligence, but also when you are helping them build post support, like post investment support, and providing, okay, what is that next step that you need? And not every founder is going to be able to know what to answer when it comes to what other help do I need? So how do
Mhm.
you kind of bring that out of them? Because the other thing that I've noticed also, and other guests on the podcast had their own opinions about it too, was about asking for help. How do you provide help to somebody who does not know what they need as a founder? Because if you're a first timer, you don't really know what you don't know because you haven't been to that other step yet. So to allow people to know that you're available, but to also know how and when to check in, I'm sure is something that is really important to your strategy.
I think if we go a little bit deeper, none of us know everything. And I fundamentally believe that. And I feel like if you're working with the right founder, then they have the humility to understand that there's an expectation on my behalf, on my part, that I know people don't know everything, but if they act like they do, then they're not the right type of founder for us. They actually could even know more than we do, but no one knows everything. So I think when you get in a position where mentally you feel like you don't need anyone's help, you're a master at it, which is great, and you're probably not even, you don't need venture capital. But I think for most people at seed where we're investing, they do have some domain expertise in what they're doing.
Yeah.
However, there's more to just that than growing a high growth company.
Mhm.
So when founders don't know what they need, we know to a certain extent that they don't know that. And the way that we want to work with them is, are they coachable enough to accept the assistance from our network, our team members, our guild? And if we can't do that and they don't want to work with us in that capacity, then we're probably not the right. No, I'm not going to say probably. Then we are not the right investor for them because they're not the type of person that we believe can grow to be the type of leader.
Yeah. No, that's really great. And are there any kind of red flags that are immediate red flags to you? So for us, it would be actually hard number criteria. So if you have already come in at pre-seed or seed with a messy cap table already, and you have like so many different advisors that have taken so much different equity and all of that stuff, or if you came from a venture studio fund that, let's say, didn't really help you in the way that you thought, but again, it went back to that messy cap table situation, and the valuation is very different than what we can expect, or the valuation cap is different than what we can possibly provide. These are kind of automatic disqualifiers. Do you guys have automatic disqualifiers that you have come across in your first fund?
Absolutely. I could run through the details of those, but to me, that's very mechanical, right? There are certain things that we don't want to see,
Mm.
such as unrealistic projections or a revenue model that doesn't make any sense. Or, I'll give you an example. Actually, not an example, more of a characteristic, because the way that we run our fund and the parameters that we set by way of we want to see X number of months over month revenue. Sometimes that's 3 months, month over month revenue growth. Sometimes it's 6 months of month over month revenue. That's kind of hard. Anyway, we have things like that. We have valuation limits such that we don't want to invest in rounds that are post money valuation of 15 million or higher. We want to see round sizes that are below 3 million. We want to see CACs at this and LTVs at that. We have all those sort of standardized metrics. But one of the most important things that I look for in a founder is, are they the type of person that understands that, quite frankly, these things are going to change and you're going to need to make adjustments in real time. But again, this goes back to what we're talking about from the very beginning is this the type of founder that we want to back? And I try to stress this so much. We can change the business. The market's going to change.
Yep.
One thing that we cannot change is the founder, unless the company's going well and we fire the CEO and they leave. But
Yeah.
I think that because we're investing at seed, a lot of emphasis is put on them and kind of how they think about building companies. And we can fill in the gaps with all the other things, but I think a lot of it has to still come back to them.
Mhm. And somebody told me this once, and I never forgot it. How, like, if you tell somebody something that is vague and positive, like a horoscope, everyone will be able to attribute it to them. Be like, "That's me. That's amazing.
Mhm.
That's totally me," right? And so when investors, and because I have a lot of different kind of opinions of why people are saying it like that. So when investors are saying, "Well, it's about the founder. It's about all these characteristics that are vague and positive like a horoscope," and then I'm like, no, I need this kind of proof, this kind of proof, this kind of proof. And then it seems like everything that you can possibly say can be said about all the different snowflakes in the world, and
Mhm.
everyone is special. And so to provide a little bit more color, can you kind of expand about, like, that it's about the founder, and what does that really mean to you, versus how do other investors kind of explain it in a general sense.
I mean, it's a good question. I think it's I look at investing not in like this one-dimensional plane of the founder is everything. The
Hmm.
founder is one thing, and you got to have the right founder in the right market at the right time.
That's right. Yeah.
Sometimes it can be the right founder, but the market's not ready yet.
Mm.
Or it can be the right market, right timing, but the wrong founder. So unless you have those three core ingredients, it's just not going to work. So it's not just about the founder all the
Yeah.
time. I also think that as a firm, thematically, they have to fit within the categories where we're good at. Like we love FinTech, we love enterprise SaaS. We're looking at a lot of cybersecurity and embedded finance and looking at some things in the commerce enablement space with
Mm.
creators and future work. If there's something outside of that, it could be an amazing founder. But if it's not within our core expertise
Yeah.
of what we feel like we can bring to them, then it's just not a good fit.
Yeah. And
So
that's
I
a
think
really
that,
great way to say it too, because you do have actual focuses.
yeah, I think that investing is about creating frameworks.
Yeah.
And if anyone's a fan of Ray Dalio, it's me who has these core set of principles that he
Yeah.
lives by.
Yeah.
And
The
everyone
pillars.
should have them, right?
Mm.
And those principles are guides that help you to stay in your lane so that you don't get off track, both personally, professionally, financially, spiritually, or whatever it might be. What are those principles? So I feel like I've always been a good investor. And the reason I think that is because I create these frameworks for whatever medium I'm looking at the time and stay within that. And if it's something that's outside of that framework, I'm just not going to do it. And I
Hmm.
think that we've done that well at Serac Ventures by creating these frameworks and then finding founders that fit within that.
Okay. Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kevin. That is a wrap for our episode. And thank you, everyone, for joining us on another episode of Unlocking Venture Capital. I'm here with Kevin Moore, and our next episode is going to come out on Monday. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.